80% of people leaving the military don't have a full-time job. They just leave and they're going to figure it out, imagine. These people will succeed. They're not just veterans that we want you to feel good about hiring. In fact, they're going to add tremendously to your business. I think a lot of companies early on don't take the resources necessary and don't put the time in to really develop a brand. This has to be done. And it's so important that you'll start it now, and it's a process. And that's something we didn't realize either.
How do you pick whether you're promoting the storytelling part or the technology part? Like, how can you find a way? Shift uses technology to match military veterans to jobs in companies like Uber, Symantec, Major League Baseball, and Affirm. They launched in 2017 with an honorable mission to give veterans opportunities they never would have thought of, and to make it easier for companies to hire people with military experience. Shift raised $4.5 million from top Silicon Valley VCs like Andreessen Horowitz, Structure Capital, Expa, and Tim Ferriss. Shift asked me to produce films portraying the incredible stories of transitioning veterans and how they thrive in the new tech environment. I was so honored to be a part of this excellent mission. How did Shift gain trust from the US military members as well as big companies at such an early stage? How did they know how to tell their own story, and why they decided to go for plenty of high-quality video content? My guest is Kate Moon, Partner Success Manager at Shift. Kate, thanks so much for joining me on Valley Talks today.
Yeah, happy to be here. Thank you.
I must share with you that, I immediately thought that Shift is a very inspiring brand. It's, of course, very mission-driven brand. And, when I learned what Shift is, I was really curious how, to pick the most important traits from this whole huge potential.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great question, and one we've been trying to answer for several months. I think what's really positive about where we are today is we're at a really huge area of growth. And so we really sat down and said we have to define who we are. So when new employees come on, when new partner companies come on, we have a very clear understanding of who we are as a brand. And what we've come to today is something we're really proud of. And so, Shift as a brand is really as transparent. We aren't a government organization and we aren't a charity. We use excellent data and we find the best talent and we help them shine. We're empathetic. 2/3 of Shift's team right now were active duty military themselves 4 years or less ago and made that transition out into civilian work themselves or military spouses. So, we're really close to the mission that we're trying to solve, which is great. And we really are focused on keeping sort of this personal touch and this human-centric approach to hiring, which I think is really important and we really hold on to very closely.
Actually, I was wondering recently, when would you say that Shift's brand was created? Can you mark a date?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, Shift, the idea was sort of definitely being developed and brought to life in the end of 2016, and that was Mike Slaw, our founder, doing the research and saying, what type of military person, what type of military veteran comes from military service and does really well in a startup environment? So at that point, things were evolving. The idea had begun. And since then, I think so many significant changes have happened to really reach the true brand today. But at that point, I would say that's when the idea got started. And the reason I think that holds true is because at that point, Mike saw that there was a very clear pathway for military members to transition into work in banks or transition into management consulting, for example, or government work. But there was no clear pathway. In fact, it was really challenging to even know what the opportunities were in technology, in media, and in startup careers. And so then the idea of sort of these immersive fellowship work opportunities, giving a job a try for 3 months and saying, are my preferences the same as I thought they were or not, really came to the surface. And that's when the brand started to develop.
Oh, for sure. Because actually what we need to say is that Mike Slaw, CEO, is also a veteran. And
right.
he started the brand, and he, for sure, in the very early months, was driving the brand through his own story, through how he felt this is making sense. Also, he had a huge beta program prior to Shift, correct? So
exactly.
So that's a big component, I guess. And what actually amazed me a lot is that one of the early investors, Gillian Manis, she, from what I know, let me know if that's correct, she also pushed a lot to form the brand quite early, like right when the fellowships were starting. Why do you think that was important at that stage? And how she, or maybe other investors, also helped you to kind of get this going?
Yeah, sure. I think a lot of companies early on don't take the resources necessary and don't put the time in to really develop a brand, because it does take a lot of resources. It really does. And I think it's very easy to overlook and even have people and investors and advisors say, that can be done later, that can be done later. Yeah. So it was really refreshing and really essential for us to have Jillian, who's a managing partner at Structure Capital, and an exceptional strategic guide and mentor for our executive team at Shift, to really say, this has to be done. And it's so important that you'll start it now, and it's a process. And that's something we didn't realize either, is really truly what a process it is to develop your messaging, to practice it, to try it out on people, and to evolve. And then you have the whole creative aspect of branding, that is the visual side of things, and it's such a process. So for several reasons, I think it was great that she really pushed us into prioritizing, sitting down, taking a step back, working with whoever we needed to work with, to figure out what is our brand and what do we want the world to know about us.
Yeah, and do you think that the storytelling component, because Shift is actually, it's a story, isn't it? Right? It's the story is the product, stories of those veterans, stories of companies who actually also benefit so much from those fellowships. Do you think that also influenced the decision to form the brand quite early? Because how else can you say who we are if not through the brand? Whereas it's all about the stories, right?
Sure, that absolutely. And I think because we had such an emphasis early on from the video content storytelling standpoint, from day one, with your help, thank goodness for that.
That was so fun. That was amazing.
Thank goodness for that. But because we had the approach of the video content storytelling, you're right. We had to immediately think about how do we come through in these videos. So definitely that was really important from step one.
Yeah, and then also coming back to Gillian, actually, she is on the investor panel in the Pitch podcast,
right?
Which is, if some of you don't know, Shark Tank in audio, right? That's how they position themselves, and actually that's what it is. Although Gillian is also a very big advocate of this is so much better than Shark Tank. You guys gotta check it out. The Shift episode, right? And actually, it was somewhere in fall in 2017 when it was aired, I think. And that's also when some of the brand traits, I think, popped up from those investors, from the panel, and from Mike, of course. And it was still when he was, pitching it in a very early stage, but people really wanted to name those things right away, right? Because it's not a tangible product. It's not even, there is a software component to it, but the end, yes, there is, which we have to talk about. But in the end, it's all about those people. One of the strong words was grit, right? And is this still one of the traits that you resonate with a lot with Shift?
Sure. Yeah, I think the idea of having grit and sort of having the drive to do something new really stems from who will be a successful Shift fellow. So we call a fellow somebody who joins the program, basically. At this point, all of our focus is on these fellowships, which are a few months long, and they are immersive work experiences, because we really believe that there's no better way to know what opportunities are out there for you, to get excited about them, and to try something new and see how your preferences are changing, right? So a fellow that is successful, and what we look at in people do have these certain character traits, we've come to find. And I think through Mike, who is a veteran himself, who was sharing the stories on the Pitch podcast about his friends, people that he knew, people that he said, these people will succeed. They're not just veterans that we want you to feel good about hiring.
Yeah.
In fact, they're going to add tremendously to your business and your company and your culture because they provide something unique and really an untapped talent and resource that you may not have ever known about. So that word grit and that kind of ability to try something new and just really transition and transform yourself into something new is pretty amazing. And I think the Pitch podcast was seeing that veterans would bring that to the table. So yes, something that, a word that gets used a lot for sure. And then I think that's slightly different than sort of who Shift is as a brand. I have to say everybody on our team has grit. I would say that for sure.
Oh, for sure.
But I think as a brand, less of a defining word, but something that's important to the culture for sure.
Oh, yes, totally makes sense. Totally makes sense. And also, still coming back to this podcast because it was a lot of, content about Shift in the very early stage that also helped probably people understand the brand as well, was the technology component. Right? That's where it came up. That's also around the time when Mike was starting to think about it. Is this correct? Do you want to evolve more? And then my follow-up question would be, how do you pick whether you're promoting the storytelling part or the technology part? Like, how can you find a way?
Yeah, no, it's an excellent question. I mean, these are things we ask ourselves every day.
Oh, for sure.
Lately, I mean, at Shift right now, things are changing so fast that every week we're asking ourselves new questions. So absolutely, things that I'm talking about every day with my team. It was interesting after the podcast, after the pitch, to hear the excitement around the idea of collecting the data, meaning after we have thousands of fellows, imagine what we're going to know about this transition process. When you think about making a high contrast career switch, doing something in an industry like the military, working on submarines for 5 years or 8 years, and then imagining taking the leap into a project manager job at a startup. It is so foreign, almost to the service member, probably an unimaginable risk, if you will. It's just an unacceptable risk to a lot of people. And so we were very human focused and personal focused and single person to single job focused at the beginning, I think, because that's still the end goal. But the investors on the pitch were really excited about the software component and the data collection and all the things you could do. And it was like a light bulb, like, of course we can do much more. So there's two components that then you sort of evolve and begin to understand better. One is, what is the value of the data that's being collected? As we have cohorts of fellows going through and learning from them and speaking with them actively before, during, and after as they get their jobs and continue on and grow their careers. And that is that your preferences change. And you can't, your personality doesn't change that much. We can work with that. Your skills, you can learn something new, but they're sort of finite and they are what they are. You have some traits and things like this that aren't going to change, but what does change and will change are your preferences. What you think you want to do, and then you try it out and you actually were totally off, for example. Yeah. And that's something that's really hard to quantify and really hard to follow and understand. But what the pitch and other investors and people have got us thinking about is the true value in collecting that data. And it's things like the pitch and early on guidance and strategic planning from these advisors and mentors that got us thinking that way. You worked closely with the brand, and I think you understand us in a way that other people, we hope to portray them to others as well that clearly. But the idea is, right now, the world of hiring and recruiting is going so technical. I mean, it's all about AI and all of these things. And although we're using software to do a better job, to scale, to help hundreds of thousands of people, at the base of what we do and at the bottom line, we will always be a human-centric company. We will always care about each person, and we will always have a talent development, personalized approach.
But still, I see another challenge here. Because Shift speaks not only to veterans, but also to the companies that are hiring those veterans. And then when you add that to your marketing communication, no wonder, this is a process, you're working on it, probably it's going to be a process for years. because how can you embed that into your, now, like, so that you speak to those veterans so that they are excited about the programs, but also the recruiters understand why those veterans are excited about it. Like
100%. You have two very distinct sides of the story. You have a service member that's transitioning out that speaks a completely different language than a hiring manager or a head of people or whoever at the company is responsible for talking to them. The company side needs to be excited about us. They need to trust us. They need to, anytime they want to use veterans, we want them to say, oh, there's this company Shift. I need to consider them at least. And that problem, the best way we could solve it is through video content and is through storytelling.
Well, I hope so. I hope it has helped.
It is the very best way. In our opinion, the only way, at least the only way we knew how. Because the only way to really tell the story appropriately is, in my opinion, to show the end result. And the end result is people really excited about the people joining their company, the veterans joining their company, the new hires that they have, and on the other side, somebody finding a really good fit within that industry, or even if they didn't get a job at that company, finding a full-time role. So when people leave the military right now, 80% of people leaving the military don't have a full-time job. They just leave and they're going to figure it out, imagine. And 100% of Shift fellows have received full-time offers eventually at the end of their fellowship.
That's amazing.
Not all in the same company, and certainly not all in the same role. But I mean, you share the story, like you said, and that's the best way to tell it.
And then coming back to the brand component, I probably know the answer, but I want to hear it from you. Like, do you think the core of the brand is going to stay the same, or it may change over time, or like the brand overall? I know you've been working on it for all the time, every day. What do you think it may become in 2-5 years?
Yeah, sure. I think all brands evolve over time, whether they want to or not. It's something that's going to happen. So there's two sides. I think we are really focused now at this stage, and I wouldn't have said this even 3 months ago, but today we are really focused on our path ahead, and we are going down this path and we will not get off of it. So in some ways, the core of what Shift is, the core of what we do and how we do it won't change. But 100% there will be evolutions along the way. Even the evolution recently towards really being human focused and personalized and really ramping up our talent development team and the community. We've since ramped up recently this huge community approach that we bring to the fellows, because we realize we can't give them everything. We're only, 30 people or whatever, 100 people, 200 people on a team.
The community is so
important. The community is so important.
Awesome.
And that's a perfect example of how we maybe wouldn't have known how we would evolve, but it's very important evolution, is we realized this was happening. We realized this is what people needed. This is what fellows, transitioning service members needed, and so we jumped on that. And also the focus on the personalized approach. We jumped on that when we realized, oh, this is the difference. This is the transformation. Oh my gosh, this is it. So I think those are two really good examples of recent evolutions of our brand and our company that maybe we couldn't have anticipated. So
correct.
100%. We're growing so fast. We're changing so fast. Things are happening every week, every month. Who Shift is in 3 and 6 months will be evolved for sure.
I think it's an awesome takeaway for all the other early stage founders out there who may be worried or a little frightened to to define the brand in the early stage. Go for it, I would say, right? Like,
for sure.
Do it, and then don't be afraid to change it as it goes. It's not like people will think you're foolish or crazy or whatever. No, that's normal. And actually do research this, and also take measurements, see how it goes, like observe this for sure. That's what your guys doing, and that's so awesome.
Yeah, for sure. I learned from around Jimmy. We interviewed so many people along the way in order to build this brand, right? Yeah. From hiring managers to veterans to everybody, that we work with around us. It was truly sitting down, interviewing them, learning about what they need. It's a process. I mean, that would be the other thing I would say is it's a true process to decide who you are. You might think that you know exactly what you're doing, but that doesn't mean that you know exactly who your brand is today and how to message that.
Right.
And I think when you think of branding, messaging is really important, and these things take time. So 100% from the beginning, you know, the resources and the time is all worth it. Yeah.
For sure. Kate, I'm wishing all the best to Shift. I'm rooting for you, and I hope you're going to have all of the soon-to-be veterans onboarded to Shift, and like all the awesome companies work with you because it's so worth it.
Thank you so much.